And that's why Mario is the equivalent of hydrogen on the periodic table of wrong video. This is the hype look back video. Crowdfunding. Where were you a year ago crowdfunding? What were the big games? What do you need to know? Where are they now? How do you feel about them now as compared to then? We are looking back at June 2021. And if I'm really feeling advantageous, maybe we can even look back at June 2020 in the near future. But let's stay on topic here. There were some big games that launched last summer a year ago from now. Just like in June this summer, we have some big names. Last summer had some even bigger ones. Let's talk. Let's do it. Click the thumb. You ready to go? Let's do this. Here we go. Number one, the biggest funder of all 2021. This is The Witcher, The Old World. Did you go in? Did you not go in? Nearly 7 million euros, 45 freaking thousand people. That is a massive amount. Most campaigns are interested in getting 10%, not of the funding, but 10% of the backers, or nary even 1% of the backers to be a successful campaign. So this was a ton, right? And I put out a video. They actually go on board, sent me a copy of the prototype, so I was able to talk about it, which was a great experience. It is all wrapped into one, right? It's The Witcher taken to a tabletop style setting. It's The Witcher as a whole, right? 1 to 5 players. It definitely is towards the higher end of that playtime. And not only with the competitive, they threw along a cooperative and a solo version, as well as like 3 expansions with mages and a new board and deluxeification miniature de jour. And they just kind of gave everybody everything that they ever would have wanted, right? Well, we'll see. It was definitely a good price for the standard pledge. And it's just a question of whether or not you were interested. During the campaign, pre-campaign, like I was at 8.5, 9. I played the game, I cooled down to an 8. I looked at it from a bigger perspective at the end of the campaign, and I said, you know what? I'm never going to play this. This is a 2 to 3 hour game once you get into it, especially from the competitive. It plays longer than you would think. And I just said, I can't get something like this to the table. This was one of the first ones that I said, I want this game, but I just can't get it played, so I'm going to have to pass on it. It definitely does things uniquely. People are going to like it. It's going to be a solid game. But if you can't get it played, you can finish the rest of that sentence for me because I've said it enough on this channel in the first place. I don't know. The extra monsters, the everything all in, the boss monsters, there's a little bit of everything for everyone. But it's not going to come at a cost you can necessarily always afford. 230 euros for the gameplay all in. When people were balking at other campaigns, this one seemingly, wasn't being balked at as much. Now, 5,000 people were getting the all in. 8,800 €1 pledgers, including myself, because I wasn't totally made up that I wasn't going to do it. But that's a non-significant portion of people, right? That is nearly 20% of people that went into the pledge manager not knowing if or what they were going to do with their pledge. So where is it? They just celebrated, as I mentioned, a year later. They're talking about the year-end summary as a whole. Now, skip to the nitty-gritty, skip to the good parts here. They are kind of starting production. They said that stuff is going to be assembled starting on September 1st. So that's not insignificant. So who knows what's going to happen with the shipping. I would dare say you're not going to have your game, if you were one of the people that went in on this, before the beginning of 2023, because it's going to take at least 4 to 6 weeks to get shipped over. It's going to take another 2 weeks to get to the distribution ports, and then it's going to take another 2 to 3 weeks at least to get it shipped out. And that's if everything goes well. So you're looking at somewhere between 8, 10, even 12 weeks after the beginning of September. So even if you say beginning of October here, that only leaves about 12 to 13 weeks before the end of the year, and that's not a lot of wiggle room. And the cat's trying to climb up right now next to my microphone, so we can't have that. But anyway, this is what you're getting. And how hyped are you? How much interest do you have? Has your game group changed since you bought this product? Now, the nice thing here is that they've got some of the other rule books shared. Which a year out, you've got expansion rulebooks up now. So that's good. But if you want to make any changes, they say that you can send an email. So take that for what you will. Now, does that include canceling if you are one of those people that regrets it? I don't know. But you can at least check out what you may have bought yourself into. And that's the thing that scares me with some of these campaigns. And the reason I'm so gun shy on expansions lately in the last year and a half or so is if you don't have a rule book by the time the expansion is shown to us, it makes me just a little worried. Now, I put a lot of trust in a lot of people who are a lot smarter than I am on these things, but it leaves a lot to wonder about for a price that is paid for well in advance, and you don't know what you're going to end up with in terms of will you like it. Not is it good, because I'm not going to denigrate people about not putting out a good product. I'm going to say, is it a good product for you? And that's the big question. That's The Witcher #1. Now, next is Fall of the Mountain King. I got a chance to play this online, tabletop simulator, one of the few that I've ever done that way, and I was really impressed. The tableau building, resource management, not worker placement, but akin to that, Euro-style game. I believe I went with the deluxe for the plastic miniatures. I'm not a big fan of them. But at the same time, I looked at this game and I said, this is a really good game. This is probably the best game, I would argue, to come out of June of 2021 in the end. That's where I would rank it. 1 to 5 players. It is a sequel, prequel to In the Hall of the Mountain King, but completely differently, mechanically speaking. It is just something I have not really seen with an area control mechanism with this clever overlapping tableau resource management system. And I just enjoyed it. And I'm not a big area control person. If you've ever heard me other videos in this channel, I don't really typically do area control because the dynamic just doesn't always fit me. I'm not a good thinker like that, if that makes sense. My brain does not work in that way. Give me an abstract, give me a take that. Oh man, my endless opportunities are just pouring out. But this is just, yeah. Now, I could do without the miniature plastic. I believe I went all in with that one, but it wasn't that much higher. It was okay. And the add-ons, the additional little expansions down here for not In the Hall of the Mountain King, but the fall was not insignificant for a reason to get it now down here with the stretch goals. So that was the other pushing point for me. I was probably a 6 or a 7. I'm really intrigued because I've gone heavier on these types of games in the past 6 months to 8 months with a little bit more depth, with a little bit more Euro style. And so I think it's really going to be a good fit for where I am evolved in the hobby. Now, I'm never going to be a full Euro heavy worker placement person, but I think this is a nice bridge to something akin to that I do not have a spot for in my collection. So I'm probably about a solid 8 right now. And that's probably why this is the top game of the month for me as a whole. And we're going to see how it does. But again, we're going to see how it does. But I seriously, when I say that the floor is super high on this one and the ceiling is higher, I believe that that is the case. Being an area control game, it's going up against tough competition, and so I think it's going to get compared to a lot of other things, but I think it stands out on its own for that reason. Either way, I'm going to find out whenever we get it, so let's check. The completion date, they say, was June 18th, so right before I filmed this, it's going to be completion. Now, we don't have any updates since then, but I'm assuming that if it's complete, that means you start assembling, that means you start shipping, that means you probably have it towards the end of Q3 if things go right over in China. There you go, number 2. Number 3, Adventure Tactics, Adventures in Alchemy. I looked heavy and hard at this. I eventually ended up getting a copy. It's over on the shelf somewhere. I don't know. I rearranged everything when I did the new studio, so I don't have a clue where anything is. But I ended up picking up a copy of the first one with not bad boards at all. The big issue was the warping of the boards and the quality control, and they've upgraded all of that stuff with some errata and everything else, and so you can get the new copy for like $90-something, I believe, in this game. It's coming back with a new expansion sequel, and this is one of the highest rated tweener games, I guess, I would look at, where you're looking at something adult, but you want to play it with the kids, and it will suit both and those needs. And so that was what this game was. And I think Tom Vassell even said it's one of his best dungeon crawlers in general, not just even like one for kids. The real issue that I did not back it for was I didn't need all the extra minis. This one was one where I drew the line, unlike Fall of the Mountain King, which I think would work perfectly well with just cubes. And that's my big concern with Fall of the Mountain King, is that those miniatures are just too big. The board needs to be absolutely massive, and that could be a little off-putting. It's more like a Rising Sun or a Massive Darkness where you've just got Cthulhu Death May Die, right? One of my favorite games of all time. Cthulhu Death May Die, where you just have these small tiles and all these 16 different miniatures that need to fit in, and it just doesn't work. And I could pass on some of these because they were just extras. Like, none of this is exclusive except for a few of the, companion mats for the add-on packs, which I'm completely okay with not having. I deluxify very few. And if you are a deluxifier, this was a great campaign to go in on. And getting the new stuff was fine, but it was still expensive for what it was. Now, this is going to be a small publisher, though. This is not a big one, so you are paying a slight premium because this was only, 2,200 backers total? So this is not a big production running the 10,000 and maybe being able to get cheaper production from that aspect. But it's the dungeon crawl that is probably most accessible and most depth-wise for kids and adults at the same time. And it reminds me the most of Final Fantasy Tactics, which is what they were going for in the whole Adventure Tactics name, to play off of that. So to be able to give that dynamic while living up to the namesake that you're going for is tremendous. Will I eventually end up with a copy in my collection? Yeah, just like Adventure Tactics. I have no qualms about saying that. But I just didn't need to get it at the time. And that's okay not to back stuff on crowdfunding and pick it up later at retail if the crowdfunding aspect doesn't fit you. It's okay to do the lesser cost, not the lesser game, because the gameplay is going to be almost exactly the same in nearly every one of these. So where are things at right now? So this May update, almost May, so this is over a month old. This is nearly going to be 2 months old by the time this video airs. Things are obviously behind. This was originally scheduled to be in June of 2022 delivery. Well, it's definitely not going to hit that, right? So going through all the various enemy packs, the scenarios, and everything along those lines. And the problem is they don't have all the printed components. So I'm guessing that you're going to be lucky if you get this one by the end of 2022 as well. Not that that's terribly disappointing, because I look at all of these as well, like I mentioned with the first couple. If they're not a couple months late, I'd be surprised if anything, especially anything miniature driven, anything that includes those whatsoever. And so this one is no exception to that. And 6 months over puts you at the end of the year anyway. So I would expect maybe November, December. I could see it pushing into the Q1 of 2023 though as well. So we'll see. I'd say that since it's been almost 2 months since an update, really seeing where things are at now could really be the issue in terms of kind of seeing if it's the end of Q4 or later. So there you go. Next up, we have AracKhan Wars, the card game. In case you're wondering what I'm doing with my hand right here, I am pretending to be Dr. No from the James Bond series because one of my cats just jumped up on my lap, and so I'm petting her. Or, prepare to die, Mr. Bond. Anyway, I don't have a trapdoor, though, with sharks and freaking laser beams. Anyway, I'm getting distracted here. AracKhan Wars. This was probably something that was very tempting to me before I ended up with a copy of Summoner Wars. It is sort of Summoner Wars, only static Summoner Wars, if you will, where the cards are laid down and they interact with the surrounding cards next to them, but you do not have nearly the ability, like with Summoner Wars, to march them across the battlefield. They relatively stay in one spot, and then you're choosing, they interact, but you choose where you put them, and then they stay there. I was really tempted by this one, because this is the type of game genre and mechanistic style that I really enjoy. And it's easier to get to the table. The complexity in terms of learning is low, but the complexity in terms of the gameplay and the tactics and the strategy that goes along with it is much higher than it is to learn. And that's why I was very interested in it in the first place. I just decided that the price point was a little bit more than what I wanted to at the time, because I'm looking at this pledge right here, this champion pledge, which actually, you know what? I wasn't even looking at this champion pledge, because I think this champion pledge doesn't include all the add-ons, because with this, I wanted all of the add-ons. Sort of like what I'm looking at with Pagan, Fate of Roanoke right now. I kind of want all the expansions, but to get all of the expansions, it's going to be relatively expensive. Play your cards, destroy your enemy cards, nuance, reveal, activate. I mean, it's a play, flip, action program style Summon Wars, if you will. Videos, multiplayer, pledges. Where are the expansions that I was looking at? Champions Pledge right there. Titans Pledge, everything in the Champions Pledge. Here we go. This was it. They included sleeves in the price and these foil cards, which is a whole nother expansion pack. Like, gameplay content-wise, breaking. So, I just didn't want the extra sleeves. I didn't want to pay for the extra mat, and I wanted the cards, though. Legendary foil cards. So you can buy some of them separately, but I just decided essentially more just to get those than it gets to get to everything. I just noped out. If I, it was weird. I'm a completionist, not really, but I decided if I'm not going to get it all, I decided just not to get anything. So decided to save my money, but this is another one where I really could see this one ending up in my collection. The problem is when you've got all these exclusives and these are gameplay, it's not just art. Where is that going to end up in terms of secondary market? That was almost the reason it suckered me in, was the FOMO more than anything else. But this one was supposed to be February 2022. So, I mean, during the campaign, I was probably a 7.5. Right now, I'm probably 6.5, but not much lower than that. So this update on this campaign is almost 2 months old. So hopefully by the time we get the next update, it'll be a lot better. But basically this update, almost a year out, is they're still doing artwork for almost everything. Design and artwork for everything, which is always the big issue with first-time creators, designers, people from that aspect, right? Is timetable and what's done. Because you just saw all of those exclusive cards, those new cards, those stretches, because that's what they were, there had to be a lot of balance that they had to work on post-campaign, and that they're still finishing off essentially at this point. And then, because this artwork is so tremendous and it's awesome, I love it, but it's so unique, there's a ton of art to do. But these are just the designs, the layouts, essentially, of all of the packages. No production, no submission yet. This is all of the stuff that they're still working on, and that's the problem with that. So if you're thinking this one's going to be before the end of 2022, I have some bad news for you. For a game that was supposed to be supposedly February of 2022. That's okay, though. As long as you're getting a good product, that's really the bottom line. A project that's on time but's bad is bad forever. A game that's late but good, well worth it. Maybe except if it's Blood on the Clock Tower, which is a whole nother video too. They're super late. Anyway, we're not talking about that though. We'll see where it goes. High expectations, sometime in 2023, I'm guessing. But there you go. 11, the Football Manager. This was also a month where I did a lot of campaign previews. I did this one, and I did 2 more of this. I did this one, I did The Witcher, I did Fall of the Mountain King. I also did 2 more games that are coming up later in this video. This was interesting game because compared to all of the other soccer games out there, this one is taking more of a top-down view of the project manager, the club overseer, if you will, the club manager, I guess I just should use that term, as the economic style resource management game, where you can customize, build your team, but the game itself is much more limited. It's not the game itself that is the issue, it's the management of the game, the surrounding elements of the game that is emphasized in the first place. And this is from Portal. Portal has done all of theirs over on GameFound, so we'll kind of see where it falls in the production side of things as well. I was impressed by the scope, but at the same time, there were some balance issues, which is not unexpected from a prototype. And we'll see how it stacks up, because football, as much as it's beloved, this is not your typical, actual playing the football game, which is why it was a little bit divisive. But it still raised 400,000 euros, which is very, very impressive for a non-miniature based game on GameFound. So that was awesome. I was probably an 8.5 before the campaign. During the campaign and afterwards, I kind of realized I'm just not a big economic. It was something different than what I expected. And so for me personally, I don't play a lot of economic style games. So I ended up not backing it because I just don't get economic games as a whole. I just don't have a lot of them. It really has to fit perfectly. And I just said, you know what? This just isn't quite me. So where are things at though? Well, if you go down here, they say we've gotten the pre-production sample, but with all of the delays and everything else, they're wrapping up the production files. And this is weird. This is the part that doesn't make sense to me. We estimate the printing will take place in Q3. So I'm guessing that is sometime July, August, September. So that you're going to get your games around October. That's, you'd have to be printing essentially in July. And if you don't have all the files done in June here, there's no way that this is going to be printed in July and shipped and gotten to you in October. So if they can manage that time frame, I still think, again, you're going to be talking similarly to with many of these other games, the end of the year, probably November, December-ish rather than October, which is fine. Because if we look back here a second, it said August of 2022, so that's not too over. That's only going to be about 3-4 months over. So that one's not too bad overall whatsoever at the end. There we go. Next up, Valor and Villainy, Ludwigs Labyrinth from Skybound Games. Very interesting take on the dungeon crawl that I was rather impressed by. definitely does things differently. The tile exploration, the crawl itself, the upgrades, the battling system, the overlapping looping from one side to the other with the tiles, it was rather clever. But I found myself not being able to get these to the table. So I ultimately decided to pass on it again because I have enough of them and that don't get to the table already. So I really am picky about my dungeon crawls-esque of any variety or scheme. I was probably a 6 before during the campaign, probably a 6-5 afterwards, just with, okay, this is cool, a lot of dice rolling, gonna be for you, not gonna be for you, clever systems. But ultimately, I said, I just can't as well for those reasons. September 2022 for the regulation of when you're going to get it. This was a game where they added a campaign to this sequel compared to the original. And they offered the original with some upgrades. They offered a whole lot of content with this one, which was pretty pleasing, actually, from a whole standpoint. And I believe that the villains and the variety was more than enough, even with the copy that I was able to play. So where are things at right now? Unfortunately, when I look at these updates, it doesn't really give me a good sense of where things are at currently. They're trying to get all of the items approved. The previous update prior to this was a pre-production copy that they had a lot of changes and, just little things to make. And so they're still trying to get it the green light. And they're basically just encouraging people to actually complete things because otherwise they need to know the numbers. So if it hasn't been printed, I think you're going to be similarly, I feel like a broken record here, looking at the end of 2022 for this one, and probably not much further if you're not going to have it printed for another month or two, with another month of shipping, with another month of delivery. You're definitely going to be looking Q4. So there you go, Valor and Villainy, Ludwigs, Labyrinth. Now we have Deliverance, the game of spiritual warfare, another semi-crawl-esque game based on angels and demons going back and forth on a grid-based system with variable angels, with variable demons, and a campaign as well as a solo sort of single session setting. This one, July of 2022, and this was a first-time creator, and this was a really good experience. This was something different, but it had enough similar elements that you could be happy with it. The price point was relatively well priced, to be frank. $59 for the base game, $89 for the deluxe with the miniatures, and $150 if you wanted to really bling it out, which comparatively is relatively lower than a lot of the other games that we see in similar genres. And it had one of my favorites, standees, right, in the base game. So that was really what I was looking at when I was interested in it. Standees are a great option, but there was a little bit of gameplay content at the higher level as well, at the 89 that was unlocked that you can get, but I'm not sure it was all exclusive though. So that's appreciable. I like the fact that they didn't necessarily lock it here. And there weren't a ton of add-ons. There weren't a ton of add-ons with this one, which was also very nice to see that they didn't have 16 different add-ons that they're still playtesting and exploring. It was a relatively, not finished product, but probably closer than several of the others that I played this month. So let's see where things are at production-wise. So the end of May here with the update, and unfortunately they're still in the midst of pre-production here as well. And I have to think that a lot of these projects are going up against each other in terms of getting done and the COVID China restrictions that have been in place. This one has no firm timetable whatsoever, but at least from a gameplay standpoint, which when I just mentioned it seemed like a product that was more complete, they've done some changes in how the skirmish rules are written because of how some of the bosses interact and just how they're going to actually be playing. But I would say you're lucky, similarly to the other projects on this list, of being able to get this before the end of the year. I would be shocked if it wasn't Q4, but that seems to be the trend. And that seems to be saying that there's some consistency in terms of these projects being about a year and a quarter to a year and a half in production, timeline, delivery. I was probably a 6.5, probably pre-campaign, probably a 6 now as well. It's a game that I could be happy playing, just like Ludwigs Labyrinth here, but it's not really necessarily a game that I would need to own as well, but easily could have fun with, especially if that skirmish plays out well. Last up, we have Scarface 1920, which was something crazy, came out of nowhere, was not expecting this from Red Zen Games. About $1 million raised, 850,000 euros. Area control deck building with worker placement. We've seen deck building, we've seen worker placement, we've not really seen as much area control, and this did it in a plastic-driven miniature way which is part of the reason it raised so much money. Miniatures and control games seem to be the rage in all of people's blood, if you know what I mean, lately in the last couple of years. Exclusivity here, expansions, a lot of stuff going on. I can't speak to this one. This was one that I only covered peripherally, so I don't know how this game differs apart from theme than other area control games out there. So if you're looking for a better explanation, I mean, just come to the page here that I'll put in the comment section below and check it out. But there's a lot of exclusive, there's a lot of unlocks here in all of these, which for a June 2022 date, again, for delivery, makes me a little bit trepidatious to click over to the updates and sort of see kind of where things are at currently. And just like with The Witcher, this is a massive price point. This is a massive, massive price point. I'm looking at like Blood Rage originally and Rising Sun originally, where the price point all in was not anywhere near this. And I always have to go back to that in terms of what can I get for that price in similar mechanisms and genres and thematic incorporations. And that's a lot of money for a super deluxe one game with one expansion. So just something that always goes through my mind. I'm not saying it's not worth it. I'm not saying you can't do that. Foundations of Rome is getting all the acclaim from AracKhan Wars because they've, made a great game, but it's over the top, deluxeified. Let's check it out. I was pre-campaign. I was a 3 or 4 post-campaign. I feel the same way. So it's not any interest of mine. I have no feelings either way. Now, if we go over to the updates here, it says not from the most recent update, but the second most recent update. Factory delivery to port is scheduled for August 15, which is farther along than I expected, which means, 4 to 6 weeks after that, you're looking at mid to end of September. So you might have this game similarly end of October-ish, if it all holds up between now and then, because of some of these things that they have highlighted down here. But the interesting thing is, and this was the second to last update, so this isn't the most recent one, but the most recent update doesn't talk about this either. Deferring shipment or payment on shipment until it gets to the port. So interesting. And if we scroll back up here to go to this one, this June update at the beginning doesn't give anything. It just talks about some production details, some extra stuff that they've done, some highlights of some of the things that are along the way. So I don't really know what the shipping price is going to look like from that aspect. They say it was a good idea that they waited, but is it going to save that much? Or is it just delaying, kicking the can down the road and having to deal with it later? So we'll see. Anyway, that is Scarface 1920. So that's everything. That is everything. That is the look back at June 2021, the anti-hype, the retro hype, whatever you want to call it, video. How do you feel about things? What campaigns did I miss? What ones were big on you from this month? Like I said, Fall of the Mountain King, by far and away my most anticipated. Probably the best one overall to me from a solid standpoint. I'm interested. I'm going to keep this one for a long time, and I'm going to enjoy it the most. So that's my own personal one, but Adventure Tactics probably number 2 in terms of getting it in my collection and playing it sometime whenever I can get 3 people consistently, because the 8-year-old probably, he's just not there yet. And the 6.5-year-old, he's definitely not there yet. So I'm trying to build my own game group, organically. Can't believe that sentence just came out of my mouth. Anyway, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. I love doing this video every single month, taking a look back. And so hopefully in the future, like I said, I'll be able to look back more than 1 year. Or maybe I should start looking and doing this at retail. But it's a little harder to get those exact retail dates of what came out in, that aspect. So I just happen to have last year's crowdfunding campaign still saved on my iPad. It just makes it easy to browse through and pick stuff out. Anyway, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for everything. You guys are awesome. Have a great day. I'll see you around.
Hey, Dad.
What's up?
Can you help Mom today? Can you help Mama make a bunk bed?
No, buddy. We need more than 2 people, sweetie. We need like 3 or 4 people. Okay? I would love to, but we just can't do it with 2 people. It's just not possible, no matter what. Even if Mommy and Daddy were both super strong, buddy, we'd still need a couple other people.